evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. Day one of the buffer zones in action. So there's quite a bit to tell about that. All right, good evening. Do fire the comments in. Yeah, so lots been going on today. So we'll talk about that in due course. What else do we put in the title? Evil milk. Yeah, well, we'll talk about the evils of milking cows, allegedly, in a little while as well. Phil Holden, our deputy leader, is going to join me later on, and we're going to talk about some conversations we had with some people, on the street, in the park in Edinburgh. That was very interesting indeed. Before we go into that, a couple of things you might notice in the production. I've got a better webcam now. I don't know how you measure these things, but I can tell you the last one cost £50 and this one cost 200. So it's better quality, but I don't know if that really shows on a live stream because you can only stream so much data per second. So I don't know if it makes much difference to a live stream. But if you think it does, you maybe say so. If you think the picture quality is better, I'm not sure. Hopefully it is. The other thing as well, my son's got some sort of super head shaver thing. Instead of my normal clippers I use. So it did my head. After it, I said, I thought I looked more like a sort of Premier League football manager. He said he thought I looked more like John Swinney. But whatever. So slight change in the hairstyle up here. I don't know if that'll be permanent or not. Right, as I say, lots and lots to talk about, lots going on at the moment. So let's jump straight in. Let's start with a quick reminder of our conference coming up, 9th of November, just a Saturday afternoon and early evening for a social event as well. Say 9th of November, Glasgow. So do get your tickets. You can find it on our social media. I'll maybe if someone could paste the link in here, that would be great as well. So I hope you can make it to that. I guarantee you'd enjoy it. You'd enjoy it and find it interesting to hear the speakers, some family party speakers, some external speakers as well, and also just a chance to be with like-minded people. It's very encouraging. Meet people from your local area as well. Maybe meet a local branch chairman. So we're looking forward to that. New webcam has more vivid colors. Excellent. Thank you. Right. That's good. I think with non-live stream video, it's definitely better. Definitely better quality. You maybe don't notice it so much on a phone, but if you watch it on a big screen, which quite a lot of people do now, they watch it on the TV screen, don't they? I think that's where it would really make a difference, all being well. Right, better quality. Good. To glare on the screen, I'm not sure if that's at my end or your end. It looks quite balanced here. Yeah, the blue background. I did the blue background. I painted that. Well, I see my wife painted that wall blue. So I thought a white wall looked boring in the background. So we painted it a bright, bold color just to brighten up the background for making videos. I think it makes it a bit of a trademark as well. So people can see straight away before they need to recognize me or whatever. Right, that blue background is sort of our signature. When it was painted, actually, it was quite an amusing story because my wife painted it while I was halfway through making a video. So one of my videos from a couple of years ago, it like does the Wizard of Oz type thing. So it starts off with a white background, then the background sort of turns blue halfway through the video. So that's that. Right. Who's this cheeky commenter? Go back to the old barber. Yeah. Right. I'll consider that. Both my barbers are the same. The price is right. They're both. Oh, right. I'll get that. Okay. Right. About the glare. Okay. Fair enough. I missed that one. Sorry. Similar blue as the logo. Yes. Yeah. It's good and bright. That's just remind me, actually, thinking about the background, that reminds me of a story I was going to talk about that I'd forgotten until I've just remembered looking in my background. Thinking about my racing cars here. There's been a story in Formula One this week. In the FIA, the governing body of Formula One, has tried to clamp down on drivers swearing in official interviews and over their radio during the race. So this is not new. If you were a journalist from a magazine and you asked them for an interview and they did an interview, there's not about that. But as a Formula One driver, you're contractually obliged to appear before the media in press conferences at certain points in a race weekend. But that's part of your job, if you like. You have to do that. And also during the race, what you say on your team radio is broadcast can be broadcast to viewers as well. And the governing body, quite rightly in my view, has said, right, we've had enough of drivers swearing, because it has become just ubiquitous recently. So when you hear it, you're just hearing this sequence of bleeps. And it's not great for little kids watching. I don't really want to hear it either. It detracts from my experience. And the drivers should be able to, that the grown-ups, virtually everyone in their professional life knows you can't speak like that. So if everyone else can restrain themselves in their professional life, then I can't see why Formula One drivers shouldn't either. So I'm right behind this ban, which just seems common sense to me. Now, if you're going to be appearing on television to millions and millions of people around the world at all times of day, then it should be family friendly. They shouldn't be swearing. Now, the reasons we don't like swearing, that's a whole other topic, and maybe talk about that another day. Max Verstappen has sort of thrown his toys out of the pram because he was fined. He was punished for it. He was warned, and then he carried on. So he's been punished. So he's been having a big strop, threatening to resign from Formula One, which is really pathetic, really. But the other interesting part of the story is this: the president of the FIA, who's is he from Saudi Arabia? I'm not sure where he's from. I think he's a Muslim. I don't know how committed. I think he's a Muslim, but he's actually been pretty good in these sort of regards. So he said the drivers need to realize, they're professional sportsmen. They're not rappers. Fair enough comment, isn't it? You're not rapping. Rappers are renowned for bad language, I would say, and lots of other failings as well. But bad language is very common in rap. So fair enough comment. You're not rappers. You're sports stars. Then Lewis Hamilton, their resident political activist, said what? Would like to guess what Lewis Hamilton said against the statement that they're sportsmen, not rappers? He said, of course, that was racist. He said it was racist. Racist because most rappers are black. Therefore, the non-white person who made the comment must have actually been expressing some sort of deep racism by using the illustration of rappers as people who swear a lot. I mean, how totally ridiculous. I mean, if Lewis Hamilton carries on this way, he'll be out of my Hall of Fame here in disgrace. He'll be drummed out in disgrace. That's it. I'm sure various of you will follow different sports, and it's interesting to see how these issues come into them at different times. Just staying on the subject of swearing, just for a little while. I mean, it is quite interesting. Some swearing operates on the principle that it says something like shocking or disgusting, so it triggers in us the response we have to something shocking or disgusting, and therefore it sort of wakes us up, gives us a bit of a jolt, and therefore swearing can be used as a shortcut to give people a bit of a jolt, to keep them alert, give them a bit of a shock like that. But to use those sort of means to draw people's attention to things that are like vulgar or disgusting, horrible, or whatever, just as a part of everyday language, I think is really not great. And the other side to it as well is some swearing is religiously motivated as well, and therefore is sounds terrible to people for whom the things being used like that are actually dearly held beliefs. So there's a good case to make about that. Scottish Family Party policy on swearing, we don't have one. We don't have one. I would say, though, I heard that some high schools in Fife allow swearing in school. So the schools are allowed to swear, but they're a tough school. They maintain discipline. The children are not allowed to swear at their teachers. They can swear in front of their teachers in the class, but not at the teachers. And actually, thinking about it now, I remember hearing of one teacher, female teacher in a high school in Fife, who cited that as a reason why she left teaching. She couldn't bear having a class in front of her, effing and bliming through the lesson, and then she had to just put up with it. And she just said, I can't do this. I can't face this. My standards are too high. And if I can't insist on my standards and have to put up with this, well, I'll go and find another job. And she did. Right, let's carry on and see what we've got here. So yeah, get your conference tickets. Now, this, I don't know if any of you are in Glasgow on Saturday. I wasn't. Looking at these pictures, I suppose I'm glad I wasn't. But this was some sort of art thing. It was outside the Modern Art Gallery. It wasn't associated with the Modern Art Gallery. My first thought was, oh, this is typical government-funded gallery throwing money at this sort of junk. But I don't think it was associated with the Modern Art Gallery. But this so-called artist puts on this show, and the point is, wouldn't it be terrible to milk women commercially and then bottle the milk and sell it in supermarkets? Wouldn't that be a really terrible thing to do? If it's a terrible thing to do to humans, then it must be a terrible thing to do to cows. So therefore, that's very, very bad. That was the sort of point of it. I've been talking about this a few times recently. And there's quite a strong move at the moment, particularly in the last few months, of the animal rights or animal equality or animal liberation, as they call it. And basically, the idea is if you can find a way where humans and animals are treated differently, then you've discovered an injustice. And in order to liberate the animals, they need to be treated equally to humans, and then justice will be achieved. Now, I think that is totally wrong for a whole range of reasons, because of the capacities that animals lack, and also because in terms of dignity and worth, humans are different. I am a speciesist, as they would like to accuse me of. I'll admit that. I'm a speciesist. I treat different species different. And I think human life is uniquely valuable, has a unique dignity. Right, where does that belief come from? I say it comes from my Christian faith, but I think it's in everyone's intuition. Everyone knows at their heart of hearts that actually human life is more valuable. Now, some philosophers take the view that, for example, a 6-month-old baby is less valuable than a cat because a cat is more able, it's cleverer, it's more independent, it can do more things. So a cat is more valuable than a baby. Now, most decent people are utterly horrified by that, absolutely appalled that a professor of ethics, so-called, comes out with that sort of thing. But that's the idea behind the sort of animal rights push. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Say milk is not humane. Now, what does humane mean? Is humane and human? Does humane not mean the way you shouldn't treat a person? And yet they're using that word applied to animals. But I think farm animals in general, I think generally farmers look after them very well. They have a degree of, is empathy the right word? I don't know. They care for them. They care about them. They care for them. I think also farm animals in general, I think that they're happy. They're fine. They go out, they eat the grass, and they get milked around. It's not a torture chamber being milked for the cows. I think it's comparable, if not better, to life in the wild. Life in the wild for animals can be quite a struggle, but life domesticated or life on a farm is, I think, a lot more comfortable for them. I'm actually going to make a full video about that. I've got some other information about it, but that's just a little taste. If anyone was there in Glasgow on Saturday afternoon, you saw that, I'd be interested to know what you thought. Niall Fraser got short shrift from you after swearing at Humza Yousaf. Yes, indeed he did. I thought that was out of order. Even though Humza Yousaf literally asked for it in those very words, it's still no excuse for that. I guess milking couldn't fit on their placards. Yes. Now, could you imagine being this sort of artist? In the video I'll make, I'll show you some more of her artwork. It's very modern and abstract, I think is the way to say it. In other words, it looks like a 3-year-old could have done it. But yeah, I'm sure she's making a lot of money out of this, out of her career in a animal rights campaigning under the banner of art. Right. The other thing I was going to say that, right, the reason I couldn't go and see this was I was at the Scottish Family Party Strategy Day, where I think it was 16 of us got together, branch chairman, leadership team, handful of other people as well, to try and look at some of the challenges, opportunities we face, try and chart out a few plans for the months to come. And here they are. So we've got, 4 pages of it. So we're quite a to-do list there. For members of the family party, we'll have a Zoom chat about it soon. I'll invite some further feedback. And then at our conference, part of what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about some new directions, new ideas that we're going to put into practice in the future. Yes, narcissistic exhibitionist. And the state of a lot of modern art is quite remarkable. It really is emperor's new clothes stuff, isn't it? I mean, I suppose that the one silver lining here is at least this. This doesn't seem to have been taxpayer funded. Doesn't seem to be. It certainly wasn't associated with it didn't seem to be associated with the Modern Art Gallery. But whether some other, I don't know, Creative Scotland or someone financed it, well, they may well have done. Glasgow Modern Art Gallery, I haven't been in it for years. I haven't boycotted it. I just don't happen to have been in. The last time I went in, which is decades ago, I remember the first thing in was some sort of recreation of a baby on some sort of satanic ritual altar. And it was absolutely disgusting. It was terrible. But that's modern art. I mean, it just makes you think, the people who look at that and think, yep, let's put that in the gallery for all the families to come in. The people of Glasgow, that this will be uplifting and valuable, life-enhancing art. And, well, that's what we get. Right, Phil is waving to me, so he's ready to come on. So let's.
Hello.
Shall we talk about the buffer zone things first, or shall we do?
Yeah, you can fill me in on what happened with the buffer zones. Is there some news today?
There is. It is the day that buffer zones were implemented. So at midnight last night, they became active, and well, this is what's been going on. Let's skip a few here. Right, where should we start with? In fact, let's start with a little video here. Right, there is this protest outside the Parliament today, organised by SPUC, and they're protesting against the buffer zone law, which is very good. There's about 40 people there to speak. Lots of press photographers. You'll see the pictures in lots of papers, other media outlets tomorrow. I went along to that. That was very good. And you might have spotted in the middle there John Mason. So John Mason, the independent MSP, came out and he said a few words, held a placard, got his picture taken. And that's been reported in quite a few newspapers. As he was standing there having his photograph taken, I was thinking, is this his like SNP suicide act? I'm not. It certainly wouldn't help in any case. This is not going to help his rehabilitation into the SNP, but we shall see. So, but John, I'll show you. Well done for being the one person who voted against it. Well done for coming out and associating yourself with the protest, but not well done for saying, "Hey, everyone, vote SNP in any case." That's the thing. Where would you see that? People gave John a round of applause, which, okay, fair enough, for voting against it. But if you're an MSP, what's more significant, do you think? What you say and vote, or which party you encourage people to support? Which has most influence, do you think?
I mean, I think there's a value in John Mason in that he is the one person that stood up, and so he deserves credit for doing that. I just hope that people don't vote SNP because of that. I think people are quite likely to see the one or two people in parties that aren't voting along Christian lines, but because they can articulate that they have a personal Christian faith or something like that, then people think, well, that's okay then to vote for that party. And so Conservatives, SNP, I'm thinking Kate Forbes and Murdo Fraser, that people might see them, and if you talk to them and you ask them about their personal Christian doctrine, they'd kind of probably come out with something we could agree with, or Christians could agree with. And people think, that person's a believer, therefore I'll vote for them. But then when it never influences their voting, when they vote the exact opposite of these things, Kate Forbes, voting for people to be be locked up for influencing people on the subject of abortion. Like that's something appalling. For John Mason, I think I appreciate the stand he's made. I appreciate that he's stood and been thrown out of the party and things like that for not standing on this issue, but standing on a different one.
Yeah, suspended.
Yeah, suspended. And I think it is a shame if there are people out there who say, yes, I'll vote SNP, because there's kind of one person that represents their view of what should be done in the party.
Yeah, so John was standing there getting a round of applause for voting against SNP policy, standing there with an SNP badge on. So his words are saying this was a really bad thing, but tacitly his badge and the fact that, if he's readmitted to the SNP, I assume he will become an SNP MSP again. So through that, he's saying vote for these people. So the message is what the government's doing is really bad, but it's not so bad that you shouldn't vote for them, because there's more important things at stake. There are more important issues in politics, and that's what should determine which party you support, as it does for me. I'm speaking as John Mason. That's the message he's giving out. So when he says, killing the unborn is wrong, what he's effectively saying is, killing the unborn is wrong. The policy of my party is evil, but there's some things more important than that mean you still should support my party. And that's where we diverge, I guess.
Yeah, like I'd give him a clap for standing up, but I wouldn't give him a clap for being part of the SNP. That's my feeling on it, probably.
Right, so that was what was going on in Edinburgh. Oh, the other thing there, actually, my slides are probably in a funny order. So the protest there, someone dressed up as convicts. The idea. The point was to get people to point photographs of them at them. Point photographs at them. You don't point photographs of people. Point cameras at them to get photographs, which photographs have appeared in the media quite extensively. So all to the good.
And I think that point on the one, which is basically that the crime is influence.
Yeah.
And we see that with conversion therapy as well. It's the crime of influence. And so, that it's not just unpopular to kind of have Christian opinions. It's now criminal to try and persuade people on any number of issues, from, homosexuality, transgenderism, abortion, misogyny laws coming in. During the election campaign, I was asked to sign a pledge against anti-Semitism. But part of that pledge basically said that you're agreeing that it wasn't the Jews that killed Jesus, and so that's part of the, I have a lot of sympathy towards Israel, the situations that they're in and things like that. But again, that's another like hate speech law that could, come in the way of just preaching what Peter preached on the day of Pentecost, that this Jesus whom you crucified, God has made both Lord and Christ, and then you've got the Islamophobia coming in through Westminster with a definition that kind of equates Islam with a race of people, perhaps because you don't have any choice that you're a Muslim when you're born, kind of thing. And then it brings the Islamic doctrine into a realm where you can't argue against it because that might be Islamophobic. And so I see that there's a number of laws which are basically anti-influence laws. Don't try and influence anyone in particular directions. And that's really, to see it happening in so many places, it means that it's almost, it's impossible to faithfully preach the Christian message without being locked up for one reason or another,
Yeah. Let's go back to this afternoon. This was a couple of ladies was stop the genocide in God. We don't need to talk about that particular issue, but it's interesting that they genocide. I don't know how they define it, but basically mass killing. I mean, that's the basic point. So they were allowed to protest against mass killing. But then, of course,
and these appear to be breaking the rule of nothing attached to the Parliament.
no, they're not. There's a frame behind them. It's not attached to the Parliament.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I think the pro-life movement also sees itself as opposing mass killing. But one of them is, I mean, the view of like stop the gender that dominates in the Parliament to the point that if you say, well, not quite sure about this, then you get suspended from the SNP.
Yeah.
But whereas if you say, right, the mass killing of unborn children, then, well, that's they need to tighten the screw to prevent people making that point. Right. The abortion clinic in Edinburgh just went out on the stroke of midnight as the buffer zone law was introduced, and just put that projection on the door. My slides are all in the middle here. Now, all right, this is where we're going to. So what's happened today? Well, in Glasgow today, these two brave ladies went out to their vigil as usual. This is not some sort of rigged stunt that they've done to test the Lord or whatever. This is what they normally do every Tuesday. So they did what they normally do every Tuesday. And I thought, surely nothing will happen today. It'll take a while before the police come along. But the police were along very quickly indeed. The police issued a statement after it saying basically, we spoke to these ladies, explained what the law was, and they went. That was the police statement. But that's not true. That is not true. The ladies were going in any case, and they had this little conversation in the car park just before they got in their cars and left. So that's the situation there. So the vigil did not stop because of the police. So no one was arrested, but the vigil reached its natural ending point before that happens. So I think before too long, things will escalate there. In fact, I've got a video here. You can't really hear the sound, but I think this just sort of brings it home, what we're seeing here. So we've got the two ladies there, Catholics, obviously. You may or may not align yourself or understand or whatever the sort of Catholic themes there. But that's what's going on. So that's the policeman coming up because the two ladies are standing there praying. I mean, the placard there is referring to a Catholic saint who is associated with the pro-life movement. I mean, it's debatable whether you could say that's trying to influence people. But the police officer was quite adamant that was the case. So that story is going to develop through the week. I would imagine there will be further developments through the week. The two ladies there, I know both of them reasonably well. Well done to them. Very brave. I think that those of us at the Parliament, all well and good. That was great. That was a really valuable thing to do. But I think the two ladies there are the ones who are really going out on a limb on this issue. So I've just got I played that, didn't I? Right, let me just look at my slides. I think that might be all we've got on that issue. And it is. Right. Yeah, so the buffer zone issue, a big issue. The event at the Parliament, organised by SPUC, really good. Very well done, very creative, all to the good. The two ladies, the real heroes of the story out there, and I say the police pounced very quickly. The police are very much trying to say, we're the nice guys. We're just trying to help you. We're trying to help you so you don't break the law. But to the police, I mean, the message is going to be, the law is bad. What you're doing is you're arresting the people who are trying to save lives, and that's on your head. That's on your conscience. That'd be an interesting question. If I were a police officer and they expected me to do that, would I do it? It's a very difficult questions. Right, Phil, let's go on to, here we go. Right, so Phil, take it away.
So, over the summer, I'm a Christian. I do kind of evangelistic things on the streets sometimes. That's kind of sharing my faith. And there are different things people do when it's kind of doing things on the street. Sometimes it's preaching on the streets. Sometimes it's doing interviews on the streets and things like that. And I have a friend who is a missionary, and he's been using a question of the day board. And it's been one of the best things for kind of starting questions. And we normally have a question that's, something like, are you a good person? Do you believe there's a God, or something like that? And it just leads to people make their mark, and we just say, why did you put that? And a lot of the time people will enter into a long conversation based on, a very, very simple question. And sometimes it's good to have a question that you can open up in lots of directions. And so I thought about doing this question, both from a sort of, do all lives have equal value? And I was going to put, do all human lives have equal value, but I didn't have enough space to write human. And then I thought, well, it's probably actually more interesting to leave it open-ended, and so people can answer it as they kind of see fit, this is just from a very short amount of time of being out that so many people stop and answer questions, and just want to kind of chat away on these subjects, and so this one, like, do all lives have equal value, was very interesting. So some people would the most common answer is obviously yes, that people come along and say, yes, of course, all lives have equal value. And that's kind of a conundrum from a perspective of somebody who's maybe an atheist and somebody who's a theist, somebody who believes there's a God and somebody who doesn't. So, if somebody says, yes, they believe all lives have equal value, I'd say, well, why do you believe that? Do you believe that because there's something objective there, or is it subjective? And they'd kind of say, well, we're all human, or something like that. And I might raise the point and say, well, if you believe we've all evolved and we're all if we came from something, a single-celled organism, and we, have, life has become more and more complex until you've got human beings, and there's a great deal of diversity between human beings as there is towards other animal species and things like that. Wouldn't that suggest that, all life forms have different values, different value, unless you said that animals have the same value as human beings? And some people were like, yeah, they'd ask, do I mean animals? And they say, well, you can choose. Like, do you think animals have the same value as humans? And, one person was there, they were kind of scratching their head and thinking, I'm not sure about that. I don't know. Can't work that one out. And he was there with a girl standing beside him as well that was a friend. I said, well, does your friend have more value than a slug? I said, oh, yes, she has more value than a slug, kind of thing, straight away. And he maybe said that with too much enthusiasm. There was maybe a little bit of chemistry there. And then there was another guy who kind of answered similarly, that he got to the point where he said, I don't think animal and human life have the same value. And that's in line with what I think. Jesus said, 2 sparrows fall to the ground, and your Father knows that this has happened. He cares about them, but you're worth more than many sparrows, that humans to me are worth more than animals. And then I asked him, what about life in the womb? Does life in the womb have the same value of life outside of the womb? And he was sort of thinking, I don't know about that either. I'm not sure on that one. And he's started to go towards thinking that life in the womb didn't have the same value because the life of the mother was so important, And then I tried to make it a bit clearer to him. So, well, what about if that life is outside of the womb? So a baby that's 24 weeks old, that's the point at which they can't be aborted for any and every reason. But babies born at 22 weeks can still survive. And so I was saying, if you've got a baby that's say 23 weeks old and it's alive and it's outside of the womb, could that be killed? Would it be okay for the mother to kill that? And to my surprise, he said, yes, I think that would be okay if the mother, because the life of the mother is so important there, and it's quite shocking to see people who think in that way, that at first they come in equality. Yes, all lives have equal value. And then their opinion is so skewed when it comes to life in the womb or even early life outside of the womb. There are another couple of girls who were very pro-life. They answered pro-choice. They answered yes to do all lives have equal value. And I said, what about life in the womb? And they were, none of the debates are angry, but you could see that it was something they were quite passionate about, and they were saying, oh, no, life in the womb, the mother is so important. We have to care about all lives. That means caring about the mother, kind of thing, I said, like, I gave an example that Richard has given before. And he said, imagine a person is, raped, and they end up deciding to keep the child, and the child is born. And once the child is born, they then think this is the wrong decision, and they want the child to be put to death. Would that be okay to do? And these two girls said, no, that wouldn't be the right thing to do. In that situation, you need to find alternatives. You need to support the mother. You need to see what are the difficulties in bringing up the child. You need to, you need to think about adoption and those kind of things, and so that was interesting as well. That the distinction for them was just inside or outside the womb. Did you have any conversations on this? Because you came out as well.
Yes. Yeah. Very interesting. Speaking to people, there was one girl. She didn't really stop. She just said as she was walking past. She said, do all that. She said, oh, yeah, very definitely. Phil said to her, including lives in the womb. And she said, no, I'm pro-choice. And it seemed like her pace quickened to get along the path. She wanted to get away. The people I spoke to, it's quite... I think that the main thing, my main observation, was just how little people seem to have reflected on these issues. Now, quite a few of the people are students. So you might find, you're talking to a third-year philosophy student, and they're thinking on these things. It's just not very structured at all. It seems as though like it's quite new to start thinking about these questions. And as people start talking, generally, I think they realize that maybe what they're saying isn't really adding up. It's not really making sense. That they can't get to anything solid to base their views on. So it really opened up very interesting conversations. The other thing I found amazing as well, so sometimes, now I was having my conversations, sometimes I could overhear Phil speaking to people as well. And particularly when I was listening to Phil, it would get to a stage where I would think, all right, Phil said something a bit challenging there. This could all go wrong at this point. This person might say, right, I've had enough of this, and it just never happened. It never happened. I think it's partly just, like the atmosphere and the spirit that's conducted him. I think partly as well is people get to the point in general where they tend to realize, hang on a minute, what I'm saying here is not particularly hanging together. I'd like him to help with this, actually. Because, have you got any answers to put into that?
And that would be the point that I'd normally interject, would be that I'd ask people what they think, and then I'd challenge them on a couple of things like animal life, human life, life in the womb. There are some that put no, and that the no people were people who were saying, that the paedophile doesn't have the same value as a charity worker. The paedophile should be put to death, kind of thing. One person who said that, he said that I'm saying that from experience in my family, that there are people in my family that have done bad things, and they need to be treated differently to other people, and then other people are like in the maybe column, and I found every conversation was good natured. And so something that Richard said on the live stream before, he said that Scotland is a debate desert. Yet doing this, on one board, I took out the question was, are you a good person? And at the end of being out for 1 hour and 20 minutes, I'd had conversations with 11 people, 5 different conversations, but 11 people involved in them because most people are in some sort of group or something like that. 57 minutes of being out was in conversation, and the rest was just waiting for people to stop and things like that. But conversations, seem to last, 10 or 20 minutes each or something like that, and so these are quite long conversations, that we're having with people, and quite in depth. People are perfectly happy to stop and willing to talk. And I think it's good for us as people in the family party to do things like this, because we need to learn to win the argument as well. So I think as a family party, often we're countering the arguments from the most extreme views. So those might be LGBT lobbyist, activist kind of people, or people who are, have really extreme views on abortion or something like that. And most people aren't at either of those extremes. They're not in the place where we're at, where we're saying that abortion is completely wrong. But at the same time, they're not in the same place as a lot of other people and things like that, if you go on to X or Twitter or YouTube, what you typically hear is the two extremes. And you've got this big cloud of followers around them, and YouTube will promote the most clickbaity title. And so what typically happens in terms of debate is that, somebody maybe on the right or socially conservative side will find the most kind of mentally unstable person on the left, and progressive with really outrageous views, and proceed to tear all these arguments apart, and then the person on the left will find somebody on the right who's done something particularly silly, and they'll present it as if all the people on the right are kind of like this, Yeah. And so we can quite easily end up arguing against a position which only a tiny fraction of the population holds. And if you just talk to random people on the street, it cuts through the AI recommendation algorithm that you'll get on social media, and you're really seeing what the man or the woman on the street thinks on these issues. And most of them are thoughtful when presented with these questions. And I certainly found that Scotland is not a debate desert, actually. So many people came away from conversation saying, thank you for talking to me on this subject. I really enjoyed it, kind of thing.
It's even, like the Good Morning Scotland phone in, which I listen to from time to time. Even on that, for someone to have the motivation to think, right, I'm going to phone up, I'm going to put myself forward in front of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people, and they're going to express you've got to be pretty motivated to do that. You've got to have a pretty strong opinion. So again, that's even on like a phone in like that, which you might think is not particularly ideological, you're getting the most motivated, which would generally be the people with the strongest opinions are the ones there. And as Phil was saying, most people are just floating somewhere in the middle, and often they're not very sure of what they think. They haven't really thought it through much, and they're open to thinking about it. This is what came to me at George Square, the immigration protest I went and commented on a couple of weeks ago. Because you're in the square. I mean, the majority of the square was dominated by real extreme left-wing activists. And then the other bit, there was some, I would say some pretty hard-line right-wing activists as well. You're in that sort of world. At one point, it degenerated to just hurling insults at each other. But then you walk around the corner, and just that world's completely left behind. And you've just got the sea of normal people going about their business in the high street. I think another thing I always find when I speak to people in the street, also going around in houses, I'm always Well, I'm maybe not surprised anymore, but I used to be surprised at just how many people there are with some sort of mental health problem. We had one lady whose views were so bizarre, it was off the normal spectrum. But from people who seemed quite with it, there were some very unusual views coming through as well. Some quite sort of extreme and concerning views as well about the value of life and the value of animal life and plant life, etc. So really way out views. Now, from a family party point of view, all we need to do is to have these conversations with about, I don't know, 30, 40,000 people in a region, and then we're getting an MSP elected when we've persuaded them. So I think with politics, the numbers are so formidable that it's difficult to get far just by one-to-one contact. I'm not saying we shouldn't try and do that. It's very important. But if we could actually get to the point where we could film some of these conversations, you probably thought that's quite interesting, hearing Phil talking about these. If you imagine you could watch an edited version of these conversations, I mean, it's fascinating. It would be really engaging content. So that's something we would like to do. We would like to create the situation where people are willing to be filmed having these chats. So haven't quite worked out how to do that, but we shall see. But wherever you are in Scotland, if you fancy to try this sort of thing, with your local family party branch or activists, then we'd recommend it. We've actually bought a whiteboard. You didn't know this, Phil, actually. The whiteboard we used on Saturday for the strategy day. We've actually bought that, so we can use it for this sort of purpose as well. So that was good. Okay, right. Thanks, Phil. It's just the one picture, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got other pictures, of different things. Like so for like a question in the Fringe, which was just, is God real? There were like 150 people that answered that. And quite an interesting thing I found with the boards was that when I was doing this in the summer, that one lunchtime normally we pack the board away when there was nobody at the board. And one lunchtime I just thought, I'm just going to sit down and have my sandwich. And as soon as I came away from the board, just loads of people started answering, and they just ask each other the question, what do you think, and things like that. And you'd have a crowd around the board because people see the tally and they're interested. And sometimes it's actually, you there asking somebody is off-putting to people, and so it's quite an easy way of engaging people if you're somebody that struggles to engage people, because it's just a case of reading out the question and then asking why, and listening for 5 minutes, and then once you've heard what people have to say, that they're willing to listen to what you have to say.
Yep. Right. Okay. Right. I'm sure everyone will have seen this already, but I'm going to play it again, and we'll just have a chat about it. So this is Keir Starmer today at the Labour Party conference. Have you seen it, Phil?
I've seen some clips from it. I'll have to see which one you're playing.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
I can't even describe this to someone without laughing. There's something just inherently funny about the word sausage, I think. Obviously, it's about a very serious issue, but that is a real clanger. Yeah. When I hear that, I think anyone who speaks in public a reasonable amount, they'll think there, but for the grace of God go I, because it can just happen at any time that you say something that comes out wrong.
Yeah.
And often it doesn't matter. Like you say, what did I say earlier? Photograph instead of camera or something, and it sort of doesn't matter. But occasionally you say something that it does matter, and it's absolutely ridiculous. But you think that will do damage to him? Being a laughing stock when you're supposed to be the respected leader of the nation, bit of gravitas. Do you think that will really
I don't think that one's going to do him too much damage. I think the things over the clothing donations and things like that have, dominated the media a lot. It's a kind of trivial issue with all the things which are actually going on, which are important, I think we know what's coming in the budget, and so when we see that these leaders have all these donations coming to them. It's not going to go down well when they raise taxes in all sorts of areas. But,
I would say if Keir Starmer makes a few gaffes like that would become an issue.
I mean, the gaffe to me was like the immediate ceasefire in Israel, in Gaza. How's he going to achieve that? That again from Scotland when they when they make these statements like that you're calling for an immediate ceasefire and things like that, but Scotland has no real influence there.
Well, there's UK obviously, but it's I think what's in his mind, he's not thinking about any sort of practical effect on the Middle East. He's thinking of what he needs to say to keep his supporters happy.
Keep supporters happy.
And to get a round of applause at the conference. In terms of all these donations, I think it's definitely true. I mean, there's in politics, no free lunch. People who give donations to individual politicians and to parties, in many cases, are buying influence. And I think it's one of the many problems with our democratic system. Because if you're running a big business and you want to have some influence over the regulatory framework under which you operate, then there's no point giving £1 million to the Scottish Family Party, because we're probably not going to be the government who's able to tweak things the way you'd like. But if you're seeing, the last few years, you're thinking, right, we're having a Labour government next. Right, so I'll give a couple of million to Labour. And then when they're the government, hopefully we can get some problems ironed out, have some positive discussions about the way forward in our sector. And I think that's a real problem. Partly because it skews because a lot of donations, it's effectively they're buying influence. It's not quite a bribe, but they're buying influence.
In every job that I go to, I have an like the last 3 jobs I've had an anti-bribery course, which tells me exactly the value of gifts that I'm able to receive. My role is one where, I write code. I don't I don't have a lot of influence on a management or any other things, but what's expected of me is basically to turn down gifts which are of a higher value than an expensive meal, or something like that. So to see these really extravagant gifts and Labour saying, "Oh, it's kind of okay because we weren't in government at the time,"
they've got to know. You've got to know that in politics of all things, that's going to be frowned on severely. I think it's just remarkable that they can't see that. Just even if they've got no moral values, no principles, even from the point of view of self-interest, could they not foresee that they're shooting themselves in the foot? I would say in some cases it is just greed overwhelming their judgment. Surely they must have weighed up in their mind. They must have thought, this maybe won't play brilliantly with the public, but wow, that looks a lot of fun. That would be a great holiday. I'd really like to go to that concert or whatever. And that side wins. It's really poor judgment. I think I should make some declarations at this point. Okay, here we go. I've got 3 Marks and Spencer's gift cards here. Each of them was given to me or myself and Mary, I think by a member of the Scottish Family Party. And they said it's to treat ourselves to something. 2 of them are for £50 and 1 of them is for £30. So if you see me in a new suit at the conference, when you're all at the conference on the 9th of November, it may well be that I've spent my special gifts on it. What else about special gifts? People have given us like holiday accommodation just to go and stay in, their little, their caravan or something. And, that's fine. But the point of view here is that there is no possibility of influence, of buying influence through that means. I mean, they're trivial monetary worth gifts, but there's no possibility of buying influence. But when you get in near the government, then that is a very, very different matter. Yeah, it's quite remarkable that they've blundered into that. Right, let's go back to my slides. We've got a few more things here. Let's we've talked about that. That's a map of countries that have legislated for same-sex marriage and countries that haven't. So the purples are the countries that have same-sex marriage. And the point of showing this is to show it's not that many. In the news, you would think virtually every country did. And all you ever hear of is the next country has announced it. But apparently the rate of countries adopting same-sex marriage is very slow now, and there are not particularly many in the pipeline either. So it seems like that's stabilized to quite a significant degree. But still, look at there, like Italy still doesn't recognize same-sex marriage. Well, not still, it just doesn't recognize it. I mean, Poland, lots of East European countries, they don't recognize it. India, China, Japan as well don't recognize same-sex marriage. So it's quite interesting. I think I think most people, if they saw that, they would be quite surprised at how few countries recognize same-sex marriage. Family party policy, of course, is that we would repeal legislation for same-sex marriage. It doesn't align with our values and our vision of family life. So, any comment on that, or shall I move on?
Yeah, like I think that's interesting. You know, it's interesting to look at, and these, you know, in some sense, you'd see them as the Christian nations that sent missionaries out to these other places and things like that, and so it's the place where Christianity has once flourished has now become incredibly secular and rejecting, you know, those values. At least at the political level. Yeah.
Okay. Right. A couple of education things. These are both quite interesting. Interesting because of the issue themselves, but more interesting to see how the Scottish government's behaving. Right. This report's in the Daily Express, and the Scottish government commissioned a report into assessment procedures. In other words, exams and assessments. How should they work? And the report inevitably, because it was produced by some sort of academic experts in Scotland, inevitably the report said you should go a long way towards scrapping exams. Ditch exams in S4, for example. And the Scottish government hasn't gone that far. They've been a bit more cautious about it. Now, this is what really annoys me about newspapers like the Daily Express. All the Daily Express, its only value is that you attack the SNP. You attack nationalists for whatever reason. So you might think the Daily Express is sort of right-wing, but here the Scottish government hasn't gone as far in the wild left progressive direction as this report suggested. But the Daily Express still attacked them because they just could have attacked the SNP for any reason. So basically the SNP hasn't gone as far in the progressive direction as they might have done. And you might remember last week I talked about their school uniform guidance they've issued as well. And it's come to light with that as well. Their initial draft of it said basically, this is not law yet, but it's going to become the law. So you better do it. You all have to do it. But then before it got actually finalized, it really got significantly watered down. And they were saying, you know, that this is not the law. I think schools will still be inspected on this, but it's not the law. So I think it's two cases where the Scottish educational establishment, which is dominated by wild progressive ideology, has proposed two things, but then the government's just backed off from it a little bit. I get the feeling with the SNP at the moment, they just want a quiet life. I suppose it's John Swinney incarnate in the SNP. They don't want to be rocking the boat too much. They just want a quiet life. And, okay, we'll be doing some things, but please don't do anything that's going to blow up in our faces. So that's they're still heading in the wrong direction. But it feels like they're tiptoeing in the wrong direction, rather than racing in the wrong direction as they were under Nicola Sturgeon.
Do you think you have a feel of what John Swinney's core values are? Because obviously when he's Deputy First Minister, he, you know, was pretty much following what Nicola was doing. Do you have any sense of where his personal values are?
My sense is he doesn't particularly have any. He just seems to trot out soundbite standard lines: equality, diversity, care and compassion, vulnerable people in society. It's just all phrased in standard language, which makes me think there's nothing personal in it. It's just like cut and paste from government documents. I think he's quite remarkable in that regard. I do an impersonation of John Swinney. Not trying to sound like him or look like him, obviously, but just the sort of things you said. I actually did it at the meal table tonight for fun. So an example would be, someone said to John Swinney I think I've used this illustration before. Like if someone said to John Swinney, look, they've dug up 3 bodies under Nicola Sturgeon's front lawn. What have you got to say about that? They're 3 former treasurers of the SNP. They've been found buried under Nicola Sturgeon's lawn. What have you got to say? John Swinney would say, well, the lawn was dug up following the proper procedures. We've now brought in a professional team who are experienced in this area, and they are dealing with the situation, and the lawn will be put back in place as it was before. So everything's in hand, and we've formed a committee to deal with this issue going forward, and we've allocated some additional funding to it. And so a plan is in place, so we can leave it there.
Yeah, and it's not right for me to comment on it while the investigation is going on.
Yeah. So it's like the core moral issue there that doesn't register with him. It just answers in bureaucratic, procedural. We formed a committee. We followed the policy. It's like there's nothing beyond that. It's just like organization, man. So in terms of his personal values, it just seems a bit of a vacuum in him. But anyway, that's my take. Right, let's move on. What else have we got? We've talked about those. Let's keep going. I went into the Scottish Parliament today. I found this sign quite amusing. Hope you appreciate this sign, because I risked life and limb to get this photograph. This is just in the security bit as you're going into the Parliament. And it's on the revolving door. So I took my phone out just to take the photograph. One of the staff there, not quite, but I thought that she was going to come and rugby tackle me. You're not supposed to take photographs in there, apparently. So anyway, I thought it was quite amusing. They have a sign saying no ball games in the revolving doors going into the Scottish Parliament. That makes you wonder what happened one day. Surely once upon a time, someone must have played some game there. The other thing in the Scottish Parliament, I went up to the reception desk today and I said, can I give you some positive feedback? And there are a couple of blokes there. They said, oh, yes, we always appreciate that. Yes, please give us some positive feedback. I said, I'm really pleased now that no one's wearing rainbow lanyards. And the whole foyer area was clear. It used to be full of displays, most of which were like politically skewed. They would be promoting something that I disagree with. So I said, I feel that this space feels as it should do. It feels like a neutral space, and it's not politicized. It was a little bit. There's still screens around the edge, but it was much better than it was. So I said, you could pass that on, please. I'm very pleased to see that. Now, when I said about no rainbow lanyards, you could see that they weren't quite, one of them at least wasn't quite sure whether to say, thank you very much. I think he was actually thinking, you bigot. But anyway, that was this little conversation. Right, these suicide machines have been in the news for ages. And the thing I wanted to point out about it is that in Scotland, encouraging or assisting someone to commit suicide isn't illegal. It is in England. It's not in Scotland. There is no law. So if someone were to create something like that in Scotland, would they be breaking the law? As far as I can see, I really don't think that there would be. Family party policies, it should be illegal to encourage and assist suicide in Scotland, as it is in England. So the whole idea of introducing an assisted suicide bill sort of feels a bit redundant, because I'm not sure it's illegal. So the bill they're introducing, I think it's effective. It's more saying this is the service we're going to provide on the NHS, rather than actually fundamental change in the law. As far as I understand it, that's the case. And on the same theme, I was talking to someone about this today. They're talking about decriminalising abortion in Scotland. But apparently it's not clear at all whether it's criminalised. Because the Abortion Act 1967, which applies in Scotland, has been devolved to Scotland, applies in Scotland. It doesn't say abortion's illegal. It says abortion is not illegal under certain circumstances. So abortion is not illegal if you get the signature of 2 doctors and it's up to 24 weeks or up to full term, in case of disability or whatever. So it gives situations where abortion is legal, which in England made sense because there's a law that says abortion is illegal. So the 1967 Act said, well, okay, abortion is illegal, but from now on, it's not illegal in these situations. But in Scotland, there isn't a law saying abortion is illegal. So all we've got is a law that says abortion is legal in these situations, but there isn't one that says it's illegal in any others, which is quite a bizarre situation. So the Scottish government, I believe, is pushing towards decriminalisation of abortion. But apparently the problem they're having is they're trying to work out what that means, because they're not sure it's a criminal offence. In any case, I think in terms of common law as well, it's a bit of a blank. There's nothing there about abortion. So it's a very curious situation. And I will have to... basically, the Scottish government want to liberalise abortion law because that's in line with their ideology, and they think that'll please their supporters. So they want to do something, and they probably will. But, yeah, the legal background is quite interesting. So assisting and encouraging suicide and abortion in any situation, it seems like it could be the case. They aren't actually illegal in Scotland to start with.
So we've got a comment here which is maybe questioning that. It says, Offence Against the Person Act still stands 1864, I think. Any knowledge on that?
The person I was talking to today said that doesn't apply in Scotland.
Okay.
Which is, I say, very, very, very interesting what's going on there. But it seems a bit strange that Scotland somehow or other has failed to get round to having laws in these areas.
I mean, that would surprise me. It really would surprise me if that's the case. But I'll have to use ChatGPT and see if you're right on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll finish. Let's just have a look at this very, very quickly. This is a divorce rate in different countries per 100 marriages. Now, the thing with divorce rates, what's happening now is a country with a low divorce rate. That's not necessarily good news. No, sorry, what I'm talking about. This is divorces per 100 marriages.
Yes.
Yeah. So these are the statistics we want. I mean, look at Russia, Ukraine. Pretty dire. I wonder what's going on in the culture causing that. So UK, middling to fairly bad. Let's put it that way. Eastern Europe better. Down to the south, basically the poorer countries in the southeast of Europe are better. Is that part of the reason?
Ireland's doing well, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. Again, I wonder. I guess there's still an effect though. If fewer people get married, then the ones who do get married might be the most committed and serious or whatever. So maybe there's some sort of effect, confounding effect there. But yeah, Ireland is quite remarkable. Right, this is a share of life births outside marriage, so illegitimate children, as they used to be called. So in the UK, 48.2. I thought I'd heard that was over 50%, but going on 50%. I mean, in France, over 60%. Iceland, about 70% children born outside marriage. Then see Turkey down at the bottom. What's that? 2.4%, is it? Can't quite read it. But it's very, very, very low. And I would say they're very concerning statistics. They're associated or reflecting the cause of an awful lot of problems in societies. Okay.
And that would certainly seem to suggest that the majority of families break down, would you say, in the UK?
These could be that these are just couples who don't get married.
Yeah, so there's couples that don't get married. Half don't get married, and the rate of breakdown when people are not married is higher than when they're married.
Yes.
Yes. And then we're pushing on 50% of marriages failing.
Yeah.
So that's the majority of homes being broken, I'd say.
So some couples might have a child and they get married subsequently. There's all sorts of complications. I mean, one set of statistics I always remember was when a child's born, if the parents are married, the chance of them being still together when the child's 5, I think 92%, was it?
Yeah.
When the child's born, if the parents are not married, but they subsequently get married before the child's birthday, chance of being together, was it 50% or something? If they are not married when the child's born, don't get married, chance of being together on the child's 5th birthday, 25%.
Yeah.
So really massive, enormous difference there. So a culture of marriage is extremely important. I think the wealthier Western European nations have like to think that people can live as they like and the social services will pick up the pieces and it'll all be fine. But I think those days are drawing to a close. Oh, that's that book hasn't been cited in Scotland yet, but if you see that in the school library in Scotland, let us know. In My Daddy's Belly. I mean, how I find these things particularly insidious when they're deliberately packaged for children like that. It's quite sinister, I think. Right, I've got a few more things, but I will save those for next week because time is marching on. Right, thanks everyone for your comments. I've been keeping an eye on those. Yeah, the other thing with marriage rates going down, people have less kids when they don't marry. When people marry, that's when they tend to have more children. So in terms of fertility rates as well, absolutely vital issue. And yet the other parties won't touch it. Now, some people might say, reform sometimes talk about marriage a bit. They've got a very mild version of a transferable tax allowance. But the Conservatives had an extremely mild version. Reform have got a not quite as mild version. But in terms of promoting marriage as the foundation for society, you ain't going to get that from reform. Just look at their leaders and their personal choices and domestic circumstances, and you can see that's not going to happen. Right, so thanks for watching, everyone. I say there's a lot to come this week. I think it's going to be an eventful week. So watch this space. I'll try to keep you up to date. Thanks, Phil, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And right, see you all next week. Good night.
Good night.